So sorry if there's background noise or fan noise from the air conditioning because it's freaking hot. But you guys don't care. You don't care. Talk about the book already. Shut up. All right, fine.
We interrupt our program with a special bulletin. An unidentified object has been spotted in orbit around the Earth.
Hello and welcome to Book Invasion. My name is Scott. Thanks for tuning in. So, The Boy and His Dog at the End of the World by C.A. Fletcher. Let's talk about it. This book was sent to me by Orbit for my review. Now, this is a post-apocalyptic book about a boy who gets his dog stolen. Go figure. But it's a little different. So, the book talks about a soft apocalypse that happened where people couldn't have kids anymore. So, over the course of some time, out of 7 billion people, 0.0001% could still have babies. 1 in a million, give or take. And since it takes 2 to make a baby, 1 in 2 million. So, 70 years later, which is 70 years probably after the gelding happened, the population was down to less than 10,000 people. So then it goes on to explain that nations stopped talking to each other. Then it mentions some more recent events like the exchange, the convulsion, and the hunger. But we don't know much about those events. They don't go into depth in the book, but that kind of gives you a setting of what happened. So when people get old and die, there's no one to take on their legacy or their memories. The people in charge can't run things anymore because there's not people there. History books are not being written or published. So the book is written as a first-hand account by the main character Grizz. So he's writing this kind of as a diary, written after the events have taken place. So he's kind of reflecting and writing all of this stuff down as a recount of his history. This is kind of the story that Grizz has. So there's a bit of foreshadowing. So when Grizz talks about the events in the book, he goes, I did such and such, which was a mistake, but we'll learn more about that later on. And so there's a lot of foreshadowing about the stuff that he does, because obviously he already knows what happens, but he's not giving you that information right then and there. He's going to kind of say, I did X, Y, and Z, which in hindsight was probably a bad decision, but we'll learn more about that later. So there's a lot of moments in that book where you know something good or bad is going to happen. Most of the time it's bad. So it kind of keeps you going in that aspect, but it reads like an open world kind of survival game where you're just kind of thrown into this world. You're searching around all these dilapidated buildings. Everything's quiet and silent. And for the majority of the book, you're spent in Grizz's head, him just kind of describing his things. And when there's only 2 or 3 other characters in the book that kind of come interact with Grizz. So I'll talk more about that at the end. But there are certain points of action and suspense that kind of keep you going along. But again, it's really kind of like you're trapped inside of the head of somebody who's in a world that's barren and empty and a wasteland. And if you don't like that style of story, then maybe this one isn't for you. But here's how I'll break it down. I'll give you 3 likes and 3 dislikes. Let's go. 3 likes. I like the setting. The big post-apocalyptic, the soft apocalypse is very interesting. The kind of last man in the world exploration is very interesting to me. I like that kind of thing where you're just kind of discovering buildings, discovering things about the people who are there, kind of that survival instincts kind of thing. That's kind of cool. I always love a good little adventure. I liked the themes that it had about loyalty and determination. The third like I had was the audiobook, because since there are no quotation marks for dialogue, it's tricky to follow. The pages are hefty. It's like there are no dialogue breaks, and it's just very intimidating to look at all these pages, and it's just paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. So the audiobook really helped me get through that. The audiobook is narrated by the author, which was kind of cool. So he puts his spin on things. He knows who his characters should be and how they should act, what their intonation should be like, and how their voice should be. So that I like when authors narrate their own audiobooks. So if you want to check this out, hop it on audio, stick it on 1.75 speed. It'll be a good read for you. My dislikes. So my dislikes, first one is the density of the book. Like I said, the chapters kind of go on, the paragraphs kind of go on. You're stuck in Grizz's head the whole time, and he's describing just nothing, the barren wasteland, and what his determination is to get his dog back, what his plan would be, how he's going to go after this thing. And so like the really deep, interesting part doesn't really happen until like through the last quarter of the book, I thought. But other than that, the book was very just heavy. It's a heavy read. And number two, my dislike is the pacing of the story. So so throughout the book, he doesn't really reach the point of... There are fleeting moments where he interacts with the person, the culprits, the thief, I suppose. But in between those points, it just kind of drones on about him traveling and walking from like the shore where he lands his boat all the way across land to where he thinks this thief is. That's it. And that's kind of drawn out across 280 some pages. So it is kind of slow going until maybe like the last 50 pages. So again, that was just a dislike. I got through it okay. It was interesting. And then my other dislike was that it felt, there weren't a lot of characters, and so it was a lot of kind of like a solitary confinement. Is that you're always trapped in Grizz's head the whole time, and he's doing it in a certain format, in a certain way. And his writing, the author is writing it as Grizz is writing it. So there aren't those kind of deep, complex sentences. Everything's kind of like a 13-year-old was kind of writing down his ideas for a reason, obviously, because you want to think of it as Grizz's first-hand account. So it's like the author is removing himself from the story, and he's putting the character in as the author of the book. So that was, it's interesting. It's a good way of writing, but it's very solitary. So that was one of my dislikes. I would have liked to see more characters come into play and seeing things from their point of view, getting a little bit of their story or what they thought of Grizz when they came across him. But obviously, that's not how this book was intended to be. And so that's just an expectation that you have to prepare yourself for when going into this book. Those are my 3 likes and 3 dislikes. A Boy and His Dog at the End of the World. Would I recommend it? Possibly on audio if you have a spare gap in your TBR. It kind of forces you to think about how far you would go. Kind of that type of thing is like, how far would you go if somebody stole something that you loved so much? Would you just take off and just go after it and go full bore? Nothing can get in your way. That's kind of the tale that it is. It's kind of like an adventure, a post-apocalyptic adventure story. So it's not very deep, and it's written kind of in a different style than you may be used to. So you can check it out. I hope you enjoy it. This one, was good. It was intriguing. So feel free to give it a shot. That's my review of A Boy and His Dog at the End of the World. If you have read it, let me know what you think. That's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you next time. Bye.